what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is SPTV.
Aaron is here with some more SPTV coverage of the Danny Masterson trial. Thank you for joining me, everybody. So the headline is Jane Doe 3 has finished her testimony, at least for the time being. There's no real strong reason to believe she will be recalled, but she was told that she is, what is the word that they used? Not put on notice. I forget what it is, but she was told there's a chance that you will be asked to come back. But for now, you're done with the cross was finished. I'm sorry, the direct was finished. The cross, there was a redirect, and there was like 16 seconds of recross. And then, and then it was ruled, okay, this is done for now. Now, what that means is that right after lunch, when we go back, Dr. Ziv, the expert, one of the experts who testified in the Harvey Weinstein case, is going to be testifying. Her specific area of expert testimony has to do with non-intuitive behavior on behalf of victims of sexual assault and non-intuitive behavior after the assault and the reasons for that. And the reason this expert testimony is coming in is because the defense has made an awful fuss over the fact that in many of the cases, there was contact between the Jane Does and Danny Masterson after the attacks occurred. Not only does Scientology conditioning play a part in the answer for why that, the explanation for why that would be, but also the subject that Dr. Ziv is going to be testifying. My understanding is that Dr. Ziv's testimony should be quite short. I believe, if I recall the sequence here correctly, that after Dr. Ziv, we're going to see Jane Doe 3's husband testify. That is also expected to be very short. It is not unreasonable to think that both Dr. Ziv and Jane Doe 3's husband could finish their testimony by the end of today. If I recall correctly, that means we may hear from Jane Doe 1 on Friday. Depending on how long that testimony lasts, we may hear Claire Headley's expert testimony on Scientology, perhaps by Tuesday of next week, hopefully. That's what I'm really counting on. So some things this morning, I have just some highlight notes I want to go over. There has, throughout the first trial and so far in the second trial, been mention of the Lily incident. And the only mention of the Lily incident is when the judge dismisses the jury and says, hey, everyone, reminder, I've already said there's to be no mention of the Lily incident. And I know what the Lily incident is. And I think out of an abundance of caution, I probably shouldn't say what it is until the trial is over because, yeah, I feel like that would be bad. But anyway, I just wanted to comment on it. Just keep that in mind. The Lily incident. Vicky Podboreski is one of Scientology's attorneys who represents every single Scientologist and Sea Org member who's implicated in the Danny Masterson crimes. She made an appearance in courtroom in the courtroom today. I don't know what it is about Scientology's lawyers, at least the ones that I've met, looking like they're not quite up to the task. I don't know. I don't mean to be superficial, but if I was an attorney for Scientology, I would look clean, professional, crisp. Vicky looked like she just rolled out of bed. She had hair all over her clothes. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Is that a strategy? I'm going to ask my attorney friend, Zach Morgan. Is that a strategy some attorneys do just so that people will underestimate them? Or they won't, be sort of inconspicuous? Is it, who's that famous detective on TV who always acted like a bumbling idiot, but really he was like, he was sharp as a tack and was making everyone underestimate him. I don't know. In fact, anyway, so I saw Vicky Podboreski for the first time today. If I see her again, I'm going to ask her why she's not representing Graham Brewer yet. I would expect her to be rushing to the defense of Graham Brewer, but instead he had to email me from some $2-bit $5 internet attorney who shares office space with a bunch of other lawyers in an office that doesn't even exist. Okay, Alana Masterson showed up in court for the first time today. I didn't even know who she was. I didn't recognize her. Someone had to point out to me that was Alana Masterson. So anyway, she was there. Let's see, that note doesn't apply. Okay. One of the biggest, the most important sections of the testimony today had to do with a tape recording that we were played. This was an excerpt of the interview Jane Doe 3 gave to an LAPD detective who had flown out to Austin to interview her at the Austin Police Department. This tape play was being played by the defense because they wanted to show that these were that in this interview, Jane Doe 3 had all the time in the world to speak her mind and be as complete and thorough as possible. And if she disagreed with anything the detective was saying, the questions weren't just yes or no questions; they were open-ended questions. And I thought this was a powerful portion of the proceedings this morning because I thought it actually proved the opposite of what the defense was trying to prove. The defense was, like I just said, I don't want to be too redundant. It was trying to prove that Jane Doe 3 had all the opportunity in the world to be as thorough and complete as possible. And yet, when I listened to the tape, what I heard was a detective who was asking questions and then would immediately answer her own question, and Jane Doe 3 would, be agreeable if the detective generally got correct what Jane Doe 3 had said. And Jane Doe 3, again, did an excellent job on the stand today explaining her own state of mind during that initial interview, what she even thought she was supposed to be doing during that initial interview. And I want to give some specifics so it's not just so general. Oh, it had an awful lot to do with whether Jane Doe 3 had said Danny Masterson hit her with a loosely closed hand or an open hand. Was it a fist or was it a slap? And I swear to God, the defense was like, oh, don't you see that, she said slap and you didn't correct her? But when you listen to the tape, it's very clear that in Jane Doe 3's mind, she's like, I don't care what you call it, as long as you understand what it is I just described to you. Anyway, I feel like I'm repeating myself too much. I just thought it was something the defense was trying to get a gotcha here. And if I just remove my own bias from the situation and I try to put myself in the shoes of a juror, I go, I don't think that tape says what I don't think that tape demonstrates what you seem to think that it demonstrates. So I thought that was noteworthy. And I didn't feel that the detectives were going out of their way to put Jane Doe 3 at ease and give her all the freedom and latitude to say what she wanted. I felt like the detective was a bit rushed. I felt like the detective was talking over Jane Doe 3 in the conversation. I felt that the detective was putting way too much effort into repeating back to Jane Doe 3 what she said, and Jane Doe 3 didn't understand at the time that there would be people who would put an awful lot of weight into the precise way that the detective was rephrasing Jane Doe 3's words. And so, not to belabor the point, but in this case, the defense wants to make a really big deal over the fact that the detective said slap, and Jane Doe 3 never corrected the detective. And Jane Doe 3 is like, I didn't know it was my job to correct the detective. Well, like, I thought the detective knew what I meant. And if she wanted to call that a slap, she could call it a slap. I don't care. Anyway, it was interesting. Again, I just felt that Jane Doe 3, again, did a really good job today. So let's see. Oh my goodness. Sean Hawley opened up a big old can of worms and stepped in it. And I had to ask myself if she knew this was coming. She introduced into evidence 2 emails that Jane Doe 3 had sent to like the chief of police of one of the LA divisions. I don't know if it was the whole LAPD or just one of the divisions. I don't understand the whole structure over there. But Jane Doe 3 took one look at one of those emails and says, this email's been altered. She goes, I don't know what happened. I wrote parts of this email. Things have been added to this email that I did not say. And at first I was like, oh shit, is the jury going to believe that? Like, this is like, this is getting into some James Bond shit here. I'm like, is the jury going to believe that? And then Jane Doe 3 came with examples. She goes, here's an example. I don't call Danny Dan. And I don't call Bijou Beige. And I don't call people honey. I'm like, oh, she's coming with the receipts. Like, I just thought that was great. And then because what it did is that it opened the door on redirect for Deputy DA Mueller, to ask Jane Doe 3 all about the allegations regarding hacking and harassment and stalking. And I felt like it was a misstep. I genuinely got the impression that Sean Hawley had no idea Jane Doe 3 was going to say those emails had been altered. And actually, this must be evidence that's being introduced in this trial that wasn't introduced in the last trial, because I also got the sense that Jane Doe 3 had never seen those emails before in terms of evidence. Like, she sent the emails, but I got the impression she was not confronted with these emails in the first trial. And so then it got into this whole section about the allegations regarding what is the substance of the civil suit against Scientology and Danny Masterson. And that's remarkable, because there have been instructions prior to this that was not allowed to be discussed. And there was one point Jane Doe 3 was on the stand. She even specifically said, she was in the middle of answering a question. She knew she was about to say some stuff she thought she wasn't allowed to say. And she goes, "Am I allowed to talk about this?" And the answer was yes. And it was quite remarkable how much they allowed her to testify to regarding the allegations of stalking and harassment, stuff I had not heard before. So very interesting stuff. Let me see here. Okay. Oh, another thing that I felt like I really wondered how the defense didn't know that this was coming. There has been much made, both in the first trial and this trial, about the fact that Jane Doe 3 is much bigger than Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson's a pretty small dude. Jane Doe 3 is a big, tall model. And when you see them in photos together, especially since she's usually wearing 4-inch heels, she's like at least 6 inches taller. And let's be honest, she probably weighed more than Danny Masterson. And in one of the incidents, what they call the second incident, or the December 2000 incident, Jane Doe 3 testifies that they went out to dinner, they had a meal, she had a couple glasses of wine, she wasn't feeling well, and she remembers nothing after standing up to leave the restaurant. And a lot has been made about the fact that Danny Masterson would be physically incapable of carrying Jane Doe 3 out of the restaurant, or carrying her up the 45-degree stairs that leads up to the front door of his house or whatever. And whenever I've heard people call this into question, I go, who the hell has ever said that Danny Masterson carried this woman? Nobody said that. Just because you have no memory of something doesn't mean you're physically unconscious and, out. You can be like blacking out, whether it's from alcohol or drugs, or, your drink being spiked, doesn't necessarily mean you're on the floor unconscious. It means your memory doesn't exist. That's all it means. And so this was very easily countered. It was essentially brought up that no one ever said Danny Masterson carried her out. Jane Doe 3 has never said Danny Masterson carried her out. Jane Doe 3 just said she doesn't remember anything after standing up. Okay, so anyway, and the judge actually shut down that line of questioning pretty quickly. But I just felt like, how did you not know that was a dead-end street? But anyway, I'm not trying to over-exaggerate and make it sound like Sean Hawley's just totally unprepared and incompetent. Obviously, Sean Hawley's an incredibly competent attorney. And perhaps there's some method to her madness that just isn't apparent to me, because I'm just someone who grew up in a cult. But I'm saying, I try to put myself in the seat of the jurors, and I go, yeah, I don't get it. It comes across as being unprepared. Just my 2 cents. Okay, we got the hack into the emails, the incident you spoke of. Okay, there's another thing that the defense really seems to be banking on as an important issue, which is that over the years, to different people at different times, when Jane Doe 3 talks about what Danny did to her, she focuses on this incident in December. This is where she thinks she was drugged and then attacked while she was unconscious, unable to consent. And she considers that the R word, and pretty much always has. That's not the charged incident in this case. The charged incident is something that happened in November that didn't involve drugging and was just different. Jane Doe 3 has already said that the November incident was notable in her mind, stood out, because it's the first time Danny Masterson actually hit her. But other than that, she's also been pretty clear that at that time, her understanding of everything didn't lead her to necessarily categorize that incident at that time as the R word. And so it's no surprise that when Jane Doe 3 over the years has given interviews to different people or spoken to friends about this, that what she talks about most is the December incident. And the defense keeps bringing this up as if, I don't know, what are we to believe? What are we to believe that they're saying? that she just made up the November incident because she found out the December incident couldn't be charged. I don't think this is going where they think it's going. To me, it's common sense that in Jane Doe's mind, November was notable because it's the first time Danny hit her, but December was really notable because that in her mind fit every definition of what she conventionally thinks of as the R word. And if you start talking to the law enforcement, and I'm editorializing a bit here, and you find out that this thing that you thought was even more horrible than this thing, but this thing can't actually be charged, well, then now you start talking about the other thing that can be charged. This is not rocket science. Again, the defense seems to think they're really scoring points on this, and I just don't think that they are. There's another thing. This was just said very quickly. I don't think anybody understood the significance of it. I don't think anybody before, former Scientologist would even understand what it meant. It was an email that Jane Doe 3 had sent to one of the ethics officers at CC, Celebrity Center, when she found out there were other victims. And the essence of this email was, I want to know what you guys did to handle Danny after my complaints about, him raping me, because I've basically found out there's other victims and I want to know how that's even possible. And the response she got from the ethics officer at the Celebrity Center was, Danny's folders are not here at the Celebrity Center. That means his auditing folders. That's actually a big deal, because do you know where Danny's auditing folders are supposed to be? At the Celebrity Center. If they're not at CC, that means the Office of Special Affairs pulled his folders, or RTC pulled his folders. That directly implicates OSA or RTC in the handling of Danny Masterson, because his folders were sent up lines. That's what that means. There's no other place Danny's folders would go. Folders don't get taken out of Churches of Scientology. Danny wasn't getting auditing at the Advanced Organization in Los Angeles on L. Ron Hubbard Way. There's only one place for Danny Masterson's folders to go, and that's up. And if they're not, and you don't just casually tell someone that someone's folders aren't here. That means there's a record of where the folders are. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I don't know that it has a lot of bearing on this case, but it may have a bearing in the civil case. May or may not. I'm just saying. Okay, let me see. I'm looking at my other notes here. There was a mention of Alicia. I'm going to find out later if that's actually Alicia Pettit, which is a big deal because she's the daughter of Dave Pettit, the head of Celebrity Center. And yeah, there's some other questions here I have to follow up with my attorney friend, Zach Morgan, for later on. Okay, guys, that's pretty much all I have on this. Let me just go through and make sure I'm not ignoring super chats, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, Bo Beats says, do you think the defense witnesses weren't all called last time because they knew they had their ace in the hole with that jury foreman? No, I don't think that played a role in it, to be honest. I think those defense witnesses are on the list in case they're needed, and I think they just decided that they weren't needed. I mean, that's a very simple explanation, but I don't think it had anything to do with that, Bo Beats. Thank you for the question. Okay, I saw another one here. Red Tar for me. Question: who pays for brewer travel back to South Africa? Scientology. The way travel expenses are often handled like this, if the person doesn't have his own money, because it's possible that Graham just simply had his own money, is they will ask some wealthy Scientologist to pay for the travel. Someone who's doing an ethics program, who's working on lower conditions, where we're paying for helping Scientology, helping the org accomplish something they want to get done by helping someone get to where they need to get. This was done all the time in the Sea Org when I was in Los Angeles, particularly when people were being recruited for the Sea Org. Let's say the recruiters were talking to somebody in Mexico and the person wanted to come and join the Sea Org. The org was not allowed to pay for the travel. The recruiter had to get a Scientology public to pay for the travel. It was weird. I think it was just a rule that came down from management, which is that we're not going to burn money paying for someone to travel from like another country to the US to join the Sea Org. And then they change their mind and they want to leave. And now what? Now we have to send them home? Like, what did we just pay for someone to have a vacation? And so I'm guessing, with Graham Brewer, he was sent away back in 1990, 1991. Who knows exactly what the policies were at that time? But I can promise you the flag land base was not authorizing money in their weekly financial plan to pay for Graham Brewer's airline ticket. That is for sure. All right, everybody, relatively short and sweet on this one. Stay tuned for the end of the day update later on. Let's see, court gets out at 4 o'clock. I'll be back to the hotel by about 4:30 Pacific time. So you should be hearing from me right around then. All right, let me hide this comment. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. Thanks to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.